Hello. How's everybody? Everybody's paraded right here and right here. Like, I'll get you there. You know that. You've learned that, right? I got a special prize for whoever was sitting on the front row on these sides today and nobody sat there. I don't know what to tell you, man. You just lose. That's all. I'm going to continue talking about choices today, if that's all right. You guys like last week? Helpful at all? Anybody know what we talked about? No, nobody has a clue. No. Do I need a recap? Is that what you're saying? I was talking about Joseph last week, and I was talking about the choices that we make in our lives. And just kind of an introduction last week, we talked about how God had put something in Joseph, put a dream in him. He knew who he was and knew the destiny, you could say, of his life. And when we have a destiny put in our lives, like we know who we are, we sense that we are created for something, right? We all have this inner drive, whether we've actually thought about it and said, man, do I really have purpose, or does my life even matter, or what am I doing? I think it's important to go back and look. Joseph was 17 years old. And when you're 17, man, usually, now I know we got a lot of cynical kids today, but usually at 17, man, you're unstoppable. You have a pretty good sense, a pretty good idea of who you're going to be and what you're going to do and how you're going to wreck the world. Change the world. And this is where Joseph started. But like a lot of us, as Joseph started sharing what was going to happen, what his life was about, isn't there always people in our life that want to kill us? Yeah. Yes, there are. There's always people in our life that when we share our dreams and share our visions, man, it's like you're launching up dream balloons, man, and there's always somebody there with an Uzi just pow, 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 shooting them down. And it's like, man, I can't just get ahead. And so Joseph, as he started sharing his dreams and his visions and what God had shown him and who he felt like he was born to be, his brothers decided that wasn't such a good idea. So they decided they were going to kill him. And it's not like today where we say, I'm going to kill you. Like they said, let's kill him. And so their plan was to murder their brother. And so they decided that, why that would be such a waste. Why not just sell him? That way, like, we can profit. So as they throw him in this pit and as they decide to sell him, some Ishmaelites come along. Now, these aren't friends of Israel, okay? These aren't friends of the line of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, right? Because Abraham had two sons, remember? One son was the son of the promise, Isaac. The other son, the son of the slave woman. The other son, the son of what happens when God's plan's not working out for us, just like we think it should. So we take it into our own hands, and then we give birth to Ishmaels, right? Anybody ever gave birth to Ishmaels? Oh my gosh, my life is so full of Ishmaels. Man, God, I know you got a plan, so here's how we're going to do it. Birthing an Ishmael. And you know what happens with Ishmaels is they never, ever, ever go away. To this day, the Ishmaelites, the Arab nation, hates the Israeli nation. Okay, do you get that? It's because one is a child of the promise and one is a child of the slave woman. And they have been at war since the beginning, since early in the story. And so these Ishmaelites come along, which would have been the most anti-Hebrew. You remember, Abraham had Isaac, then Isaac had Jacob, and Jacob's name was Israel. So that's where that comes from. Like the nation of Israel are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob on the side of the child of the promise. So early in the story, the Israelites sold their brother to the Ishmaelites. Does that make sense? Today we could say a Jew sold his brother to an Arab. Is that Not intention, right? Massive, not good things happen like that. And they probably presume they'll just take him and kill him because, well, that's what you would expect. But instead, they take him down to this land of Egypt. And in the land of Egypt, he was sold to a guy named Potiphar. So we'll pick up the story today in Genesis chapter, wait for it, 39. No, yes, but not Exodus 39. It's not the same. It doesn't even look the same. Okay, so in Genesis 39 it says this. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his Egyptian master. He was brought into the house. Like, he wasn't living with the slaves that had been purchased anymore. He was brought into Potiphar's house. And his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord caused all that he did to succeed in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and attended him, and he made him overseer of his house and put him in charge of all that he had. He was the head officer over this huge Egyptian war machine, this captain of the guard. And he takes this slave and he starts to notice that God's hand is with him. And he puts him in charge of all of his house. From that time, he made him overseer of his house and over all that he had, and the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. The blessing of the Lord was on all that he had in his house and field. So he left all that he had in Joseph's charge, and because of him, had no concern about anything but the food he ate. He didn't worry about nothing but meals. Man after my heart. Like, just what are we eating next, right? Now I think this is important to understand because Joseph had a choice to make when he was sold into slavery, didn't he? And he knew, he had this deep knowing that he was created for more than this, right? He had this sense in him that where he was at and what he was doing wasn't in line with the plan that he knew he had in his heart. Now, a lot of us run into these obstacles, right? The first obstacle being sold to the Ishmaelites. The second obstacle is being in Egypt, when your vision was to rule the nation of Israel, and you find yourself in Egypt. And what do we do when things don't go our way generally? We complain, man. We get bitter. We pout. We whine. Sometimes we just sit with our arms crossed and settle. But Joseph didn't do that, right? He had a choice to make. He could have done that. He could have gone in slavery and he could have been the slavery slacker. You know those guys. You work with those guys who are the slavery slackers. They not doing what? This is not what I was cut out for, right? I'm better than mowing yards. I'm better than this job. I was meant for more than this job. So you become a slavery slacker, and he's the guy that's always just getting by, minimum work, works when the boss is paying attention, and you see this all the time. And maybe you've hit that place in your life where, man, your life's just not going where you think it should be going. And so what do? Pout, whine, complain, gripe, cry to everyone and everybody in your life. Like, you're a Debbie Downer. Wah, wah. All right? So when your friends see you coming, they're like, oh, I'm out of here, man. Or like, they're inviting you over to the house and they're telling the kids, do not bring up work. Do not, if you bring up work, I'll kill you. Right? We choose. But I think the interesting thing is that it didn't change who Joseph was, even though his circumstance changed. And I've got to get this through to you. You have to understand that you are more than your circumstances. Do you understand that? You are more than your current circumstance. You are loved by God. You are His special creation. There's this song U2 does. I was listening to it this week. I had a lot of time to listen to music. I had to drive to Lubbock, Texas, and you have a lot of time to do nothing if you drive to Lubbock, Texas. You don't have to turn. You don't have to stop. You don't have to do anything. Your mind just... I was listening to this song, and it's called All I Want Is You. It's one of my favorite songs. And I thought, when I was listening to it, I thought, I always thought this is a love song about a guy and a girl. But as I listened to it, it's not. Like, a lot of times when U2 write songs, they're like deeper meaning in their lyric. And when you listen to the song, like a song like Mysterious Ways by U2 is a song about becoming the Holy Spirit, being filled with the Holy Spirit. And when you listen to All I Want Is You, I started listening, and what I heard was, this is God's song to us. And what we do is we offer Him gold, and we offer Him silver, and we offer Him our best, and we offer Him all these things and our service and all this. And I remember in the Bible, God saying, you know what? I don't want your sacrifice. I want your heart. All I want is you. Like, we're the most desired thing that God could have. All that God wants. All that He wants. He doesn't want your performance. He doesn't want your goodness, your righteousness. He says, like, your righteousness is like filthy rags. Like, the best you could possibly do is like trash. It's garbage. It's a real confidence booster, isn't it? He says, all I really want is you. We are more than our circumstance. Do you get that? And we have a choice in our lives. We can either live out our circumstance or we can live our potential. Every one of us. We get to choose that every single day. I love what happened with Joseph, though. Joseph chose to live out who he was created to be in spite of his circumstance. The ruler of Israel. All the nation of Israel, God had showed him all of the nation of Israel would bow down to him. He would be their ruler. But he's a slave, sold by the Ishmaelites. He came in as the least. And instead of taking on an identity of a slave and taking on the identity of the least, you know what Joseph did? He lived out his destiny. I know who I am. I know who I was created to be, and I know whose I am. And so he lived his life with integrity. He lived his life with hard work. He didn't slack. He wasn't a slave slacker. He rose above all of that. And he kept his nose down, his head down, and he was obedient. He did what those who were placed over him said. You know, maybe in your heart you feel that you've been called to lead. You feel that like your destiny, your place is to do something that matters and to influence and guide and direct, right? But do you know that you will never walk in any authority until you walk under authority? You will never have any authority until you submit to authority. So this is a big problem in our world today, right? Because submission is weakness, right? I don't have to do what they say. I don't have to do what they tell me. I'm better than this. I don't have to take out the garbage. I don't have to clean the bathroom. I'm above this. But instead of being who we are, we become our circumstance. Instead of being who we're created to be and who God sees you as, we become our circumstance because of our failure to submit to authority. You see it all the time, man. Turn on the news. Everything is I hate cops, right? Everywhere. It's all you see. Do you realize that they're placed in a position of authority? And I've never seen anybody saying yes, sir, and no, sir, with their hands in their pockets get beat down. Don't happen, right? It never happens. But it's those who will not and refuse to submit to authority. When we refuse to submit to authority, we lose everything. God, the Bible says this, and I hate this. This is part of the Bible that we highlight in black marker. God establishes all authority. You get that? And you can, hey, God, what are you thinking? You can say that. You can think that. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. God establishes all authority. So when we fail to submit to authority, we fail to submit to God. And why that drives me crazy is I don't think God knows the people he puts me in authority under. I mean, I just think, I'm pretty sure God can mess up. No, that's not true. Do you think, look at this. You're meant to rule and reign, right? Everyone, we know we were meant to rule and reign. Let's just all agree right now. Right? Yeah, we were all meant to rule and reign. We know deep in us. But in every one of our lives, has there not been a Potiphar? Don't you despise starting at the bottom? Oh, man. And the thought of going back and starting at the bottom again. Jeremy had a baby this week. He's old. He's old. I thought to myself when I saw the pictures, I thought, oh my gosh, I could not start over again. I would just die. And I don't mean that figuratively or ha-ha. I'll die. I would be over, man. Just hook me up. I'm done. The thought of starting over stinks. But listen, just because we have to start over sometimes, it doesn't change who you are. It does not change who you are. We still have a choice. We can either be who we were created to be, we can walk in our destiny, or we can whine and complain and be in misery and be in depression, and we can just mope around, and we can be Debbie Downer and become our circumstance. You know what I see in my life? Everywhere I look, people become their circumstance. Why do we do that? When we know there's something in us, and I have a theory, I have theories about everything. I have a theory and that theory is it's fear. Like, we're afraid to perform well under authority because we're afraid somebody above us is going to get the credit. And somebody above us is going to get promoted. And then we won't get what we deserve, and they'll get what we deserve. So we can't possibly be a team player and work for the company or the corporation or whoever's in authority. We can't give our best, because if we give our best, whoever's in authority over me may get noticed, and I might not get noticed. Here's what Joseph did. He lived out who he was created to be. He was in the position of a slave but had the heart of a ruler. And he lived and he worked and he functioned as a ruler. And God poured out his blessing. I have this theory that if we walk in who God created us to be, no matter what the circumstance is, that God's blessing will follow us all the days of our lives. Amen. Did you get what the story said? That Joseph was blessed, but Potiphar was blessed, and Potiphar's house was blessed. God blessed the Egyptians through the commitment and the identity of a Jew, of a Hebrew slave. So what happens? Potiphar takes notice. Wouldn't you like for those in authority over you to take notice of you for the good things, not the bad things? For the blessing that follows you, not the curse that you create? I say, man, we create our curses in our life, right? I mean, we talked about last week, you might want to go back and check it out, because we talked about taking responsibility for our own lives. We talked about entitlement. Like, you are responsible for your own life no matter what your parents did, no matter who was bad to you, no matter what you think you deserve. You are responsible for your own lives. So Joseph works, and the blessings of God follow him. And Potiphar sees that, man, this Joseph guy's different. Now, we're like, you're going to come in to me next week, and you're going to go, Todd, I tried what you talked about. It didn't work. Our attention span is a drive-through. We live in a drive-through world. I tried that for a week and it didn't work. You realize Joseph is doing this for years. We don't have the concept, right? We can't think in terms of years because I want my destiny now. I know who I was created to be. I'm 18 years old and I should have it now. Right? But that's not the way it works, is it? Have you noticed that God never ever takes you straight to where He shows you He's taking you? I have a little experience in this. Do you know, like, I think, I may be wrong. Somebody, one of you, like, study nerds is going to come to me after and go, that's not true, but I think it's true, so I'm going to say it anyway. I think the trip from Egypt to the Promised Land was like a 3-day walk, 4-day walk. It took them 40 years. Have you noticed God takes you the long way a lot of times? I told my dad this week I was having a pity party. I do that a lot. I just don't do it out here. Well, I do too. So I can't really say that. So I was having a pity party, and I told my dad, I've noticed in my life I cannot do anything the easy way. Like, if everybody's doing something one way, man, and it's just flowing like butter, I got to do something else. If it's printed and laid out and step by step, I have to go and do it this way. Why? Why do I do this to myself? I told him, why do I always have to do everything the hard way? Why can't I just do something that's easy? Because you have to be true to who you are, not your circumstance. See, if we wanted to live in our circumstance, then we'd always take the easy road. But here's what I found, is that the majority is usually wrong. Anybody else notice that? Remember the last election. That's awesome. Do you realize that when the children of Israel, I mean, you ought to read the Bible. It's a great story. It is a great story. But the children of Israel, do you realize that every single time the nation of Israel took a vote, the majority voted out of the will of God? There is not an instance in the Bible where the majority was right. You know what's right? Truth. Truth is right. No matter where you find it, truth is always right. Being true to yourself is always right. Being true to who you are is always right, no matter what your circumstance is. We are more than our circumstance. We are more than our current circumstance. And the thing is, you don't need anybody to tell you this. You just need to be reminded of that occasionally, because deep inside, you already know that. You already know that you are more than your situation. Joseph made a choice. It's the same choice that we sit here and face all the time. We can choose to be who God created us to be and be true to ourselves. Or we can choose to become our circumstance. And we can be bitter and angry and stressed. The will of God is not always the easiest way. What I found is it's rarely the easiest way. If it gets easy, I freak out. I get scared. I get nervous. Like, I'm scared. I'm like, we got to be out of the will of God. Something's going wrong. We got money in the bank. We got, like, everybody's healthy right now. Stop. Whatever you're doing, stop it now. Right? Because when you're in the will of God, like, it seems to always be challenging. But you know, what I found is that the only way to build character is to spend 40 years in the desert. Nobody's ever had any character that did it in 4 days. Character's not built in 4 days. Character's built in 40 years. We got a generation now that don't want to wait for anything. 4 days. Saw this thing the other day, you can graduate college in like 2 years. I need it now. No, you need to spend a long time in college. You need to grow up. You need to develop frontal lobe. It's funny whenever you're a kid, when you have a kid and you look back on yourself and you think, man, there's no way I was that stupid. It's not possible. But then you really think, and here's the thing, man, we look at our lives like the Bible. Do you realize that the writers of the Bible, these are snapshots? Like they didn't, like Paul, man, you take Paul. Everybody's like, Paul was the greatest, man. I wish I just had that faith like Paul. I wish I just had that encouragement like Paul. I wish I could just look at my problems and go, I call this blessing. I love it because Paul writes on his good days. You realize that all of Paul's letters are maybe, 6, 8 days out of his life? Have you had 6 or 8 good days? Did you write on the good days? Everybody struggles. Everybody struggles. Everybody goes through these things. Life is hard a lot of times, but it's those things in life that are hard that build character. When I look at my kids as they grow up and I think back to being in their situation and what I would like to say to them is, man, I want you to avoid what I had to go through. But now I realize if they don't go through anything, they won't have any character. There was this kid, I'm just going to tell this one story and I'm done. There was this kid, he was 16 years old. He was in the news again this week. He was 16 years old and he was drinking at a party and he got drunk and he drove and he killed a couple of people. And that's tragic. I mean, it's tragic every way you can imagine. It's tragic for the family with the loss. It's tragic to be 16 and have taken a life. It's tragic everywhere. I hate alcohol. I tell you this all the time because of my job. I see nothing but destruction that comes out of it. If you drink, it's your choice, but you are only gambling with loss. There is nothing to gain. There's no benefit. There's only marking time until it costs you, until you lose. You're going to lose. The house always wins. You're going to lose. This kid goes to court, and you may remember the story. This kid goes to court, and his attorney pleads that he suffers from this thing called privilege, affluenza. That he lived in such an affluent family that he never really knew right from wrong. He never really knew struggle. He don't realize the consequences of his actions. He's never had to deal with this. So he gets probation for killing people, driving drunk, 16. He was in the news this week because, YouTube, there's cameras everywhere. You realize that. Like, you don't do anything today that's not on camera. You're on camera right now. You didn't even know it, did you? I got hidden cameras all over the place. Not really. You can see them. They're big, sticking out. He's in the news because he was caught on camera at a party, a keg party, drinking out of a red cup. He's going to get off again because you can't prove what's in the red cup. See, if we never have to deal with the consequences of our actions, we never develop character. And we never change. I know a lot of times we want to save our kids, but sometimes it's good to let our kids fail. And pay the consequence of that failure. Like, a lot of us don't have a problem with letting them fail. It's just less work. But then we go and clean up their messes. And we're not helping anybody. When life is hard, when we have to deal with the consequences of our own actions, we develop character. Character is who you really are. It's who you were created to be. Do you realize that? And when you develop character and you walk in who you were created to be, the blessings of God will follow you all of your life. But if you become your circumstance and you don't deal with the consequences of your action and you refuse to take responsibility for your own life and your own actions, if you refuse all those things, you're going to be in misery your whole life. And it's going to be one setup and one failure after another, after another, after another. You can choose, though. That's the greatness of this. I don't care what you choose. You may be the biggest flake on the planet. Like, that's okay, because you don't have to be today. Do you realize that you can choose today? You can choose to serve God and be who you were created to be, or you can choose to continue on the path that is being dictated by your circumstance, and you choose. You choose. It's great that we have choices, isn't it? You ever just wish God would take other people's choices away? Because it's all your choices that are jacking me. That's what we say. It's like, yeah, I like free will, but I don't like my family's free will because it affects me. Choices. Who are you? What's your destiny? What has God put in you? What's that seed? What's that thing crying out in you that you know that you are meant for more than what your circumstance is? Find that place and become that person no matter what your circumstance. Maybe you were created to be king of America. Be king of America. I don't care if you're cleaning toilets. Clean toilets like the king of America. Pick up trash like the king of America. Do everything you do as if you were doing it for God. Because after all he wants is you. That's all he wants. You got to stand up with me. I want to pray for you.